This is Secret America with your hosts, Jack Danger and James Clary.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Jack Danger along with James Clary, and we thank you for joining us for this special episode of the JFK file release. There is just so many interesting things going on here, James, and even though it seems like we got shorted, there's still, I think, a third of the files weren't actually released the way they were supposed to be. There's still some interesting nuggets in there. I mean, some really shocking things, too. What do you think?
Yeah, I got to be real honest with you. We pulled this podcast together kind of quickly. I haven't had a ton of time to look at it, but from what I can glean, one of the main things is that we now know without a doubt that the CIA was involved in the assassination of JFK. The thing is, so many of us that have been in this arena for so many years, it's like, come on, we know that. This may come as a shock to some in the mainstream media, although I don't think so. I think they'll pretend it. But, now we know. They had Oswald under surveillance the whole time. Now, I haven't seen Jack, and maybe you've had more time to look at it. I've read reports that the CIA is now definitely linked to the assassination. What more do you know about that?
Oh, no, they're without a doubt linked to the assassination. It was definitely the CIA along with the Mossad. And if you saw, there's actually instances inside these files where the CIA actually asked that any mention to Israel be redacted from these files, be taken out. And there's so many more things that link them with this, especially with JFK. Actually, he was against Israel, getting a nuclear program, starting a nuclear program and getting the nukes. Then he was also he was going to register AIPAC, which is, the most powerful industry in the world, if you will, the most powerful organization, especially when it comes to Congress in the United States.
Lobbying,
Yeah, exactly. And he was going to register them as a foreign agent. And they can't have that kind of thing. So Mossad, along with the CIA, because JFK famously said that he was going to smash the CIA into 1,000 pieces. And when you say something like that before you do it, which is why I was worried, I don't want Trump saying that kind of thing before it actually happens. When you say that, you got the CIA who doesn't want to be smashed into 1,000 pieces. And then you've got Mossad in Israel who wants their nuclear program and does not want to register AIPAC as a foreign agent because they're the number one lobbyist, in the country and in the world. Those two forces come together and they're able to use, and if you ask me, I still think, based on what I saw, it looks to me that Lee Harvey Oswald was definitely the patsy in this whole situation. Especially afterwards, when you can see them talking to him on camera, and he's like, what's going on? What am I being charged with? He had no idea what was even going on right before Jack Ruby shot him. And the amazing part that these files do reveal, James, is that Jack Ruby met with Lee Harvey Oswald only a couple of weeks before this assassination. So to me, it all sets up as what seems to be, him being the patsy. They're like, okay, here's what you're going to do. I'm going to have you do this for us, not anything to do with the assassination, but then they blame it on him, and Jack Ruby's like, all right, and kills him. It's all pretty crazy stuff, and there's a lot more in there that has to do with the CIA, and there's stuff in there talking about them, with sex trafficking and a whole bunch of other stuff, blackmail, the stuff that we talked about with Jeffrey Epstein, where they were running these blackmail operations. That's in there too. It is some shocking stuff in there, James.
Yeah, and there's a lot more. The idea that Kennedy would have survived is almost unthinkable when you think about the forces that were allied against him, because it wasn't just the CIA, it wasn't just the Mossad. You had the whole military-industrial complex. They wanted the war in Southeast Asia. They wanted it desperately, and Kennedy had already made plans to remove the troops from Vietnam. They wanted the Cold War with Khrushchev. He had already begun secret talks with Khrushchev to unilaterally disarm our nuclear programs between Russia or the Soviet Union and America. The military-industrial complex was no way going to stand up. Now, what about the mob? Look, the mob was definitely involved. I read Sam Giancana's book 25 years ago. It made very clear that the mob was involved. They lost their largest income stream in Cuba when Castro took over. That's where the whole Bay of Pigs thing came about. A lot of those the people were mobbed up. There were different groups, and this is old news. This is nothing in the release. That there were at least 4 different Cuban groups of paramilitary groups that were doing active training to try and take out Castro. We're going to learn a lot more too with this release about the different ways that they tried to kill Castro. You know, last week on the show, I talked to you about Dr. Mary's monkey and how they were developing this viral cancer, right? And they were going to try and slip that to Castro. Well, Jack Ruby was killed with the same cancer. And you know who came to see Ruby a couple weeks before he died? Jolly West, the guy who ran the CIA's MK Ultra program, went to see Jack Ruby, and a lot of people surmise that he was slipped. He was given an injection of this viral cancer that I talked about that was developed in New Orleans, and Lee Harvey Oswald was there, you know, with these same groups that Jim Garrison all brought out. It was all involved out in New Orleans. These Cuban troops were being trained out of there. And by the way, John F. Kennedy's brother shut down these training operations shortly before Kennedy was assassinated. He shut down. He said, nope, you guys are no longer allowed to do this. We're not going after Castro. It's done. It's over. And he sent armed people from the DOJ to these 4 different camps and shut them down. So my point is there were so many forces allied against him. The oil industry, the silver certificate, the Fed, you know, Kennedy actually issued a bill that was backed by silver. He was trying to get rid of the Fed. Jack, there's the UFO thing. A lot of people and very close to him said Marilyn Monroe even talked to someone about this, that he said he was going to release the files on the UFOs and alien technology. I mean, they couldn't let him live, Jack.
No, they couldn't. You're absolutely right. And he was actually, the files actually show that he was even probing Russia for rogue CIA agents at the time of his death as well. And it says that there was a small clique of the CIA agents that actually were in on this assassination. And that was probably the ones that he was probing for, the rogue ones that are, you know, I wouldn't say that they're still in there, not the same people, but the rogue clique itself is probably still within the CIA, as you know, that they do things that we couldn't possibly imagine or would ever know about. But they were definitely involved in this. And then there's even things in these files that goes all the way to 1994, where it shows that JFK Jr. actually had a wrote a handwritten letter calling Joseph Biden a traitor. It does not say why, but it does say that he wrote a handwritten letter that says Joseph Biden, senator at the time, Joseph Biden is a traitor. And then this is the man that goes on to become president. So that tells you how strong the forces are against America. Because when JFK Jr. was killed, he was running for a Senate seat in New York. Guess who he was running against? He was running against Hillary Clinton.
Right.
He might have been her first murder. Who knows? But I can tell you one thing. Yeah, you never know about this thing because she got his seat.
Have you looked into his plane crash?
I remember something about it, but it's been so long since I've looked into it. Do you know what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. It was. They say that he crashed because of poor weather, and that he wasn't a trained to fly instrument rating. Jack, the night was perfectly clear. There was no bad weather. Now, explain this. I did a whole radio show on this. The CIA, get this, after the crash, the CIA set up a 3-mile perimeter around the crash and wouldn't let anyone in there. What?
That sounds a lot like a few other crime scenes that they've been at lately, where they kind of make a huge perimeter so nobody can see what's actually going on.
Like the Trump assassination of Butler, how the FBI was. The thing that I want to find, and I told you this offline yesterday, I haven't had time to search it, but I want to look for FBI complicity because I know the FBI was complicit. They're the ones that found the magic bullet on the gurney in the ER.
The magic
This
bullet, yeah.
yeah, this pristine bullet that supposedly went through two men and, part of a car and did like 10 injuries. And it was perfectly pristine. And this FBI agent claimed that he found it on the gurney in the ER, just like they found the passport of the 9/11 hijacker lying on the sidewalk outside the
Yeah,
building.
or the Tesla Cybertruck bomber. They just happened to
Yeah,
find his ID. The only thing that
exactly.
wasn't incinerated. But did you see the video out right now? It's a different angle, if you will, of when JFK was assassinated, and it purports to show that the driver actually shot JFK. That's what, and this is not an altered video. You can see the man turn around and look, and there's something in his left hand, and you can see a line of sight. Now, I'm not saying it actually happened. I'm not saying he was the one that shot JFK. I think his name was Billy Greer. He's not the one. I'm not saying he's the one that shot JFK. I'm just telling you that the video is out, and that's what it looks like. But I will also say that as soon as these files were released, there was a police and SWAT actually had to respond to an armed gunman at the CIA headquarters hours after these files were released. Now, there's still information coming in about that, so we don't know much about it. We don't know the results or what happened yet. All we know is that there is an armed gunman, and police and SWAT have cordoned off the area, and the man is at the CIA headquarters just hours after the release. So that could be something to keep your eye on, because who knows what the real story is there. There is so much going on with conspiracies. These files actually confirm the existence of chemtrails. Did you know that? Because they're talking about chemical agents that they want to spray in the sky to kill the crops in Cuba. These things actually confirm chemtrails.
Well, we know there's a long list. I think there's over, I just did a show on it. I mean, there are dozens of declassified operations that the military and the intel carried out on the American people. Hell, St. Louis was one of them. They sprayed different bacterias on all different populations, and they usually picked out the the ghetto, the poor people, and to see how they would respond. I just did another show on this like 3 weeks ago. I mean, it's insane. I pulled up this list and I'm like, my God, our own government dozens of times have intentionally poisoned different populations. So I don't put anything past these people. But yeah, I think the biggest revelation is the Mossad and the Israel connection, because in all the books that I've read about the Kennedy assassination, I've read a lot, and think of even Oliver Stone's movie, that was never brought up. The Israeli connection, and I think it's a
Nope.
huge part of it. I think it's a huge reason that they've held these files back so long, particularly considering the political framework that we're living in now with the war in Gaza. Israel can't, they don't want to be seen as part of this horrible thing. Now, listen to this. President John F. Kennedy and U.S. Attorney General Bobby Kennedy forced the American Zionist Council to register as a foreign agent, blocking them from donating to U.S. officials. RFK was assassinated on June 5th, 1968. AIPAC replaced the American Zionist Council without any opposition. And the letter that shows us was signed by Donald Rumsfeld. I mean, all of these crooks. Think of all those people in the George Bush administration. I heard someone say the other day, and I totally believe George Bush was the worst president, worse than Biden. I even believe it, with what he did with 9/11 and all of the cronies, Cheney, Rumsfeld, all those guys were in on it. Jack, it's amazing what's happened, these released. But remember, we've still got RFK. Sirhan did not kill him. Period. End of story. The FBI was up to their ass in that, and we've got MLK, which was another intel op by the FBI. And I think it's time we need to find out, Jack. I want to hear your opinion, but we need to find out what happened at the Butler, Pennsylvania Trump assassination. We've got to find out what happened with the Las Vegas shooting. And more than anything, it's time to release the stuff on 9/11. Do you know that the FBI, the day after the Pentagon attack, confiscated every videotape within a mile of the Pentagon. There are clear and concise videotapes of the so-called plane going into the Pentagon. Those need to be released. If we're going to talk transparency, it's time to tell the truth about 9/11. What are your thoughts?
I will tell you that I have seen videos where it looks as though it's a missile that actually hits the Pentagon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I also say that there's something else that the files do show. It shows that they knew that Kennedy was going to be assassinated, but it also shows that they knew that MLK was going to be assassinated. There is a Russian by the name of Sergei Sornoronov. I don't know how the hell to say his last name, but he actually, in this letter, this was a handwritten letter many years ago. It doesn't actually, it says early 1977. It was when he was being questioned about things. So and this was August 19th. The letter actually refers to August 19th, 1963. Now remember, JFK was assassinated on November 22nd, 1963. So this is about 4 months before, about 3-4 months before he was assassinated, okay? And this guy, in the handwritten letter, it says, I said Mr. Lee Oswald will be killed after he kills Kennedy. I said, and then it also says, I said, as I heard that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. will be killed, and that he said, I said, a man who was in prison at this time is going to be the one to kill him. And that was James Earl Ray was in prison at this time. And he said it was going to happen in Dallas, Texas. And this all happened after he was given some kind of truth serum, and then he was also, they said that they gave him like anesthesia gas to kind of like drug him and make him actually talk and tell what he knows. And these are the things that actually came out in that handwritten letter about 3 months before the assassination of Kennedy. So there is so much to unpack here, so many crazy things, and I can guarantee you that there is more in there that we do not know about at this time. But I can tell you right now that it definitely points to the CIA and Mossad as the culprits of the assassination. Now, don't get me wrong, the mafia and other things had a hand in it, but definitely the CIA and Mossad are the ones who led this assassination. It also points to the fact that the CIA, even though that they know that they were going to be outed here, they wanted to take Israel out of it. They wanted to make sure that Israel was not mentioned in this. So what that shows me is that Israel might even be more powerful than the United States. Now, I'm not talking about militarily, but I'm talking about like behind the scenes. It seems like they have a ton of power. If you're talking about Israel and AIPAC, they basically control the United States Congress. So there is a lot of things going on here that this actually affects what's going on today, James, not just with the assassinations, but with how powerful Israel is.
Yeah. Listen to this. The day after the assassination, a CIA agent, this was just released, Gary Underhill was a CIA agent, left Washington in a hurry. Later in the evening, he showed up at the home of his friend in New Jersey. He was agitated. He said that a small clique within the CIA was responsible for the assassination, and he was afraid for his life. Less than 6 months later, he was found shot dead. The number of people that have died surrounding the assassination, you know, many of these great researchers, you know, like Jim Mars, for instance, have always said, look, there's so many murders tied to this assassination because they tried to cover it up. So, I don't think you can just paint the whole agency as being involved, but it was a group of rogue agents, like we said. Now, whoever was leading the CIA at the time may have been involved. I'm positive, 100% positive that George Bush Sr. was involved.
Without a doubt. He was in Dallas, Texas at the time, even though he tried to say he was in a different Texas town. There is proof he was in Dallas at the time.
There's only 2 people of note who say that they don't remember where they were. George Bush Sr. was one of them. You know who the other one was?
Who's that?
Richard Nixon.
And they both became president.
And they were both at the meeting at Clint Murchison's house the night before the assassination in Dallas. LBJ was there, and where his girlfriend famously reported that after he came out of this meeting at Clint Murchison, this Power Oil executive, that he came out to the car, she said something about Kennedy, and he said, well, you won't have to worry about that son of a bitch after tomorrow. And, you know, she's been telling the same story forever. So There was a group of very powerful people that decided to take him out. Yes, our government was involved. Yes, people like Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon. Now, Roger Stone says Nixon wasn't involved. I don't believe it because he said, "Oh, I don't know where I was on that day," or he said somewhere else. It turns out he was definitely in Dallas. So George Bush had an oil platform. That was one offshore. That was one of the places that these Cuban paramilitary groups trained at. I mean, it's all tied together, and it is a very intricate web, and it's going to take weeks, maybe months, for the really good researchers to sort it all out. But what we've seen so far is pretty stunning, brother.
It really is. And I'm going to paint a picture of what I think happened here. So I think that JFK, he was going to, like I said, he said he wanted to get rid of the CIA, basically. He wanted to get rid of their autonomy. He wanted to get rid of the Federal Reserve. He wanted to make sure Israel did not get nukes, and he wanted to register AIPAC as a foreign agent.
And
so I personally
too.
Oh, yeah. And you want to get us out of Vietnam. So I think that Lyndon Johnson, first of all, wanted to be president. That's the number one thing. But Israel comes to, Lyndon Johnson might even know a lot of these Mossad agents, and George Bush was deep in the CIA. So it's no doubt that George Bush knew a lot of the people in this clique that he probably actually approached them to get rid of JFK. He probably approached the people that were in this clique of CIA agents. And then I would say that Lyndon Johnson was probably approached Israel about this and the Mossad, and that's how it all ended up getting together. And I mean, there's no telling what. Yeah, and the mob, and there's no telling what actually happened because the mob was all intertwined with our government back then anyway. So, I mean, they were just as powerful as anybody else.
Still are. The CIA still runs drugs with the mob.
Oh, still. Yeah. I mean, things are still as dirty as ever.
That's why they don't want this fentanyl across. You don't think the CIA's making bank on the fentanyl? Of course they are.
Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm sure that they.
No, I agree with your supposition totally. It was this group of very powerful people, and George Bush Sr. was involved. I think that's going to come out. He always denied when he was named director of the CIA, he denied that he was ever in the CIA. And then remember the memo turns up from, it was from an FBI agent that a CIA agent, George Bush, reports that the president had been shot. He was in Dallas, and George Bush, oh no, it was a different George Bush. They actually tracked down the other George Bush, and he lived in like New Jersey or something. So yeah, I mean, there's really not, I'm the biggest surprise is the depth of his Israeli involvement. I really wasn't aware of that. And man,
I have to agree.
That just changes everything. And you're right. This is about today. And, Trump's been accused of being an Israeli, loyalist. And I think by releasing these files, it kind of shows like he's just for transparency. Yeah, he believes Hamas is horrible and he's willing to help Israel destroy him. But at the same time, things are kind of turning. Now, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but that war over there, I think a lot of people are starting to say, this looks more like just a genocide than a war. You know what I mean?
I completely understand, and I'm really not on either side. Just like I'm not on either side with Ukraine, Russia, because honestly, I don't give a fuck about other. I mean, I'm sorry, Mark, for cussing. I don't give a damn about other countries, because I mean, I'm all about America. I mean, whatever happens over there, it is what it is. But I will tell you that Trump, he does kind of seem like an Israeli sympathist, but that's only because he saw what happened on October 7th and how horrible it was, and then everything that led on from there, and he's just been trying to help, but he's by no means a person that's deeply immersed in Israel. But it was shocking about how deep they went in this thing. I mean, you've got even the CIA to this day is trying to hide Israel's involvement in this assassination of JFK. And it all comes back to today. That's the whole point of releasing these files. The fact that the CIA killed John F. Kennedy, everybody already knew that. That just makes the conspiracy theorist, still undefeated, and the best part is exactly. And the best part is that, the CIA developed the term conspiracy theorist for people that questioned the JFK assassination. That was the whole purpose, was to discredit people that were questioning it. And it turns out they were correct. They were right the whole time, James.
The irony. I love it. It's freaking karma coming back to bite them in the ass. But look, it's exactly what the Democrats do today. It's projection. They always accuse us of doing exactly what they're doing. Chuck Schumer the other day talked about, I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm so worried about the oligarchs. And then meanwhile, he's got these activist judges, which, I know we're going to talk a lot about that on Saturday. I'm just so incensed about what's going on there. But it's the plan. It's the Democrat plan. I think they knew that Trump was going to do this. They had these judges lined up. And, they're doing what they plan to do. But anyway, Jack, we probably ought to wrap this up. I know I've got stuff I got to do, but it was a great idea to have this chat, my brother. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to say that the reason that these Kennedy assassination files are so important today is because these things are still happening today. I mean, draw the parallel to the Trump assassination attempt. You got some patsy that ended up being killed who couldn't say anything that was going on. You've got people like CNN who had never aired a Trump rally in his entire 5, 6, 7 years, but yet now all of a sudden they air the one Trump rally where the assassination was supposed to happen, and that's the whole reason they aired it, was because they were supposed to get him being killed on live television. So you tell me that the CIA doesn't have Operation Mockingbird? Oh, they're deep in the CNN. You better believe it. They're deep in MSNBC, and they are deep in all of this, and they tried to kill President Trump the same way they killed President JFK. And I will tell you that the only reason they did not succeed is because at the last second, this man turned his head to the right to look at this chart. I actually have a video that shows that it wasn't Thomas Crooks who pulled the trigger, if you ask me, but whoever did have the line of sight had a bullseye right on the side of his head, right here. That's what the video shows, right here. And if he had not turned his head at the last second and the bullet went by, it would have blown him right in the center of the head, James. So it is the CIA, same old dirty tricks, and that is why the Kennedy files are so important.
Well, let's not forget, too, that in my opinion, the Mossad was deeply involved, if not behind 9/11.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, there was many people involved in that.
The dancing Israelis right there that claimed they were art students and turned out to be Mossad agents who set up video before the attack in New Jersey to where they had a perfect line of sight to the buildings. They set up video cameras. Then when the planes hit the buildings, they were seen dancing and laughing and screaming.
I saw that, and
they were deported. They were deported, and they claimed to be art students. We now know they were Mossad. How would Mossad know that we were going to be attacked?
And the amazing part is these files also revealed that CIA actually plant agents as students in these colleges to get these kind of demonstrations and get people riled up. The files actually show that they plant foreign agents as well. So these people that you see on college campuses that are for Hamas, they are actually most likely intertwined with the CIA, meant to do this.
Yeah. No, I agree totally, bro. Well, we'll pick it up Saturday. There's a lot more to discuss, and I'm sure by then we'll know a lot more. Like I said, I've been working. I haven't had a lot of time to look at, but I'm going to do a deep dive into these files, and we'll talk to you Saturday. I'm James Clary. He's Jack Danger. You've been listening to a special episode of Secret America. We'll see you this Sunday.
You've been listening to Secret America with Jack Danger and James Clary.